Okay, Groveland, this is probably a story that many of you may not know if you weren't here in the 70s, but it represents kind of the darkest days for Groveland Township's future and what's turning around for us. So I'm going to give you some history here about the big gravel pit that existed behind us. Originally, this 188 acres or so, which is now owned by BLB Enterprises and Groveland Township altogether, was part of what was referred to as the Jennings Brothers Farm. It used to be farm property. And when they sold it and got into the oil business and stuff, it ultimately ended up being owned, as I understand it, by a company called Stablex out of England. And Stablex's claim to fame, if you will, is they wanted to take all of the nastiest byproducts from manufacturing, things like chrome plating bumpers and paints and that, and mix it with low-grade fly ash into a cement-like substance they called Silosafe. Well, everybody out here in Groveland was upset that this potential landfill on this porous soil directly on top of a major aquifer would contaminate the water here. And so, believe it or not, when we only had about 4,600 residents, we joined together in a group called UCare, and the township accommodated some millage money into a fight that lasted for several years, and they spent almost $500,000 fighting Stablex. We didn't want it here because we felt there was a tremendous negative exposure to us. And I'm going to tell you my understanding as it was told to me on how we actually won that case, because it's kind of a bizarre story. At that time, there was a law that had been written in the state of Michigan to accommodate a pharmaceutical company that wanted to dispose of some unused pharmaceuticals. And they wrote a special law for them. Stablex thought they could use that same law to get rid of their hazardous materials here. So they didn't file for it as a regular landfill. And frankly, if they had originally, it probably would have been approved here. But they filed for it under that law that was designed for the pharmaceutical company. And basically, in layman's terms, at the end of it, the judge kind of gave them the equivalent of, if you walk like a duck, you talk like a duck, and you say you're a duck, that was your chance to get it, and you don't qualify, so you didn't get it. And when I asked our township attorney, how did we win? He said, I wish I could tell you it was good lawyering, but actually it was luck that we won on. And some people think this might apply to some other things, but in this case, they tried to use a law that wasn't designed for them and fit into it, and that's how we ended up persevering on this and not getting Stablex here. That cost us almost $500,000. A couple of tax revenues had to be diverted to cover it, but it ended up saving this from being destroyed. So we've kind of taken, over all these years, a piece of history in Groveland that was very dark, took the proverbial sow's ear, and are now trying to turn it into the Silk Park. If you look around here, you can see, we've probably noticed that the building here in front of me, the blue building, is labeled Task Force 1 when you're out on Grange Hall Road. This is the central location for all of the catastrophic emergency response equipment for the whole state of Michigan. There's 11 or 12 of these centers scattered around the U.S., and we were very fortunate to be able to secure one of them here. And this was a joint venture, again, between the township, which owns the property it sits on, and Bedrock, which built the building for them. Now, this takes some finagling to figure out how we made this happen, because we felt it was an advantage to have this facility here. But you have to go to somebody and say, will you consider building a building on our property that you're never going to own, and doing something with the state of Michigan, which usually has tons of caveats to get out of leases if they want to, based on decisions by the governor. Well, Barry Bass was the one who put up $1 million for this building. And so it's a cooperative effort, and we were right. It's staying here. It's had its contract renewed just last year for another 5 years. So we're in pretty good shape with this facility here. In addition to that, back here you can see the new fire station is going up. This is going to replace the old one we did the other video on, to replace that for the headquarters building for Fire Station 1, all on one level. And the front part of that office complex is actually for the state police, which are currently upstairs at the old fire station. So this building will be much more efficient, much better suited. You can see all the tall doors for the fire equipment to get in, and much better accommodation and a little more space for the state police. So we're hopeful that leads to good things going forward. This property was the main venue for, when I say there were 4 attempts at landfills here in Groveland, 3 of them were where I showed you over on the ORV park properties. The biggest one was the one here, and that was the first one. They wanted to turn this whole thing into that seal-safe landfill. We're lucky that we persevered on that. It's got no correlation to any other court case I've ever seen, but we did luck out on it. So I wanted you to know that's what this property was. When you hear people say out here, what happened with Stablex, that was the company that wanted to fill this up with the nasty material. And a group of citizens got together in a group called UCare to help try and fight it and dig out information on the process. After they got done here and lost the court case, they actually packed up and went to Texas, but I don't know if they ever got cited anywhere in the U.S., okay? When we got this property, it had a whole bunch of steel retainer wall, seawall type material, to put a test cell on for the first cell that was going to be filled with Stablex. And I used to have a machine repair business before I was at the township, and I had a lot of contacts with steel companies. So I actually found somebody to buy all the steel off the site from Don, the supervisor here prior to that, and we got about 10 grand, or excuse me, we got about 5 grand for the steel retaining wall that got bought. We had to pay 10 grand in back taxes when Stablex left the property to us. So you could say we bought this 180 acres originally for $5,000 if you don't count the $500,000 we spent in the 70s fighting the court case, okay? That's really what happened. And now this property has the potential to become the silk purse of the township. We really don't have very much in the way of a business district. A couple of restaurants and gas stations, that small industrial park on Big Sky. This is going to be developed into a tech park, and we feel that when this gets done, it will generate the tax dollars that most communities have, where they have a balance of some business to help run the township and a lot of residents. We're going to have this business part to help us, and it should meet the financial needs of the township, I think, for decades into the future without necessitating any kind of a tax increase within the township itself. We can't control the state or the county, but within the township, we think this is the solution for long-term to give good funding for the fire department and good funding for the township to operate going forward without having to incur debt. It's kind of a unique operation, so as you watch it in the next couple of years, you'll see the rest of the improvements go in. When the new building's dedicated next March of 25, they'll be extending the road up through an easement we have to get to the ORV park to entice people that want to be affiliated with the ORV park. And we're going to do some landscaping on the east entrance over here. And then eventually in 2027, the Department of Transportation is approved and is working on the final design now of a roundabout to improve the way traffic gets onto I-75 at Grange Hall Road. And one of the legs of the roundabout will go directly in for our main entrance at the west end of the park. So that's pretty much the bulk of the history. As I remember it over the last 40 years, having experienced a lot of it myself. I was in UCare and involved in a lot of those discussions, and I've virtually been involved in all 4 of the landfills that we've stopped over the years. So I hope this helps you get a little bit of appreciation for what we've had, but from our darkest day, we think this is going to end up being the future for the township. Have a great day.